Hey, welcome everybody to Pro Mindset Podcast. This is your host, Craig Domann. I've got a special guest today. I have James Shaw. James is a beach volleyball guy. He's 6'8". He can jump up and almost touch 12 feet on the backboard, which is the top of a backboard. He's been on the U.S. national team. He's played in about 5 European countries in different leagues. He's a national champion runner-up at Stanford University. Welcome to Pro Mindset today.
Thanks, Craig. Great to be here. Yeah, excited.
Hope I didn't screw up that intro.
No. The intro's great. And I'm glad I clarified in our lead up about the runner-up. Yeah, I don't want to claim anything that we didn't get.
James is married to a professional beach volleyball woman, Molly, who we're going to have on the show down the road. And what we want to start out with, James, is this. Your father is a Hall of Fame type coach at Stanford. You grew up with volleyball in your blood. You're 6'8". Did you know you were always playing volleyball, or did you consider basketball or any other sports?
Yeah, I did not know. My sister kind of got me into it when she hit high school, and she hit sort of the club, youth volleyball scene, and she sort of sparked my interest there. But I thought I was going to be either a baseball, basketball kind of guy, and played both going into high school, and thought those were my two strongest sports. And then I got into playing volleyball and realized I had sort of the natural stuff that it took, and soft hands, big hands, like setters and like big time blockers. That's a big thing that can help. And I had really good touch on the ball because I'd always just been kind of playing around in the halls at my dad's practices every day for 15 years. And so it happened sort of naturally. And once I started getting more interest and saw more success in the sport, I just slowly started working my way over, and basketball and baseball kind of just took to the side for me.
Okay, what is it like playing beach volleyball at the highest level when it's 105 degrees, it's hot, and you got sand everywhere? I mean, that's one of the things that when I go to the beach and we play sand volleyball, you're diving. I don't dive anymore, but it's like you're just like a ball of sand, ball of sweat. How is that different from playing indoor?
It's so different. It was one of the bigger thoughts in my mind, honestly, the first time I ever started training full time on the beach was like, how am I going to deal with the elements as easily as it seems like most of the pros do? And it's literally just exposure therapy. I think the more you're in the sand, rolling around, getting sweaty, and dealing with 100 degrees, and dealing with the sun, and dealing with being sticky from sunscreen and sweaty and exhausted, it becomes just a normal thing. It's just a thing you deal with. I would say like a month in or so, I just got to the point where there were a few days of training where I just kind of like was just covered in sand, and at one point I just kind of like looked at myself and like felt the sand, felt the sweat, felt the hot sun, and I was just like, all right, I'm in it. It was almost like this moment of like, okay, this is my sport now, and I'm I guess that means I'm a beach guy now. Like I can deal with all the elements finally.
Well, one of the things that's interesting is that you almost need to have like a child's like mentality to play beach volleyball, because you just don't care. It just doesn't matter. It's just part of it. And you have a lot more control over your environment when you're playing indoor.
Yeah. And honestly, that's a good thought. And I think the other interesting point to it too is like, that is sort of the initial way that you sort of approach going out into the sand, and when it's cold in the morning or when it's hot in the afternoon, you're starting practice. And that's the initial feeling. It's like, I just got to be out here trying to play in the sandbox. And then deeper into the practice, deeper into a tournament day, deeper into a tournament weekend, it becomes really like an endurance sport. I was talking about this with my family a couple days ago, just in sort of relation to this long stretch of tournaments that I just had. But at that point, it really becomes a marathon, an endurance thing, and you are dealing with the elements in a different way, and you're having to overcome, I think, a lot mentally in that. in that way. And you have to remind yourself that everybody you're competing against is also dealing with the same stuff. It is a level playing field, even though it feels like, God, it feels so hard on me. It's a big weight on my shoulders. If you can kind of release that, and train your mind to snap back into, oh, this is a level playing field. Everybody's feeling the same way I'm feeling. You get back to the point of just, all right, now it's just competing. We're all on the level playing field. Let's just focus again on the task,
So you mentioned before we started that you and your wife went on a multi-continent tour the last month in tournaments. What is the biggest challenge? Is it the food? Is it the time change? Is it conserving your energy? Is it tapping into your motivation? What's the toughest mental?
Gosh, I think every tournament's different. I know it's sort of like an easy answer, but every tournament's different. They're like, for the first one, for example, it was the time change, because you're not on the right time zone. For the most part, that's going to be the case, especially coming from America. There's not a whole lot of tournaments, especially international tournaments, that are in America. And so we got to fly to, in this case, it was Brazil and then Southeast Asia for the next 3. So those are, at least 5 hours away for Brazil, and then 8 to 10 hours away for Southeast Asia. So that's a big thing. But once you get adjusted, you just feel normal. And so if it's a second tournament in a row, you don't feel time change really at all, because you're adjusted.
So
in Southeast Asia, not yet.
Not yet. So being 6'8", how do you fit in the seats?
You don't. You hope that there's a window, or not a window, an open seat next to you, and then try and get an aisle. Stretch your legs out every now and then. Yeah, there's a lot of hoping that you fall asleep for a good amount of the time, and then you don't have to think about being so squeezed while you're falling asleep or while you're asleep. And then there's a lot of just getting up and stretching and moving around and doing laps around the aisles. Like that's a normal thing. But yeah, that's just one of the many things you got to kind of deal with as a pro athlete, especially on the beach tour. It's like it's a worldwide thing. So, yeah.
Okay, so as a beach volleyball player, not a lot of people probably realize what kind of training you have to go through to be at your best. A lot of people know, for football, you want to be strong and fast. For basketball, you want to get in the gym and shoot 500 shots every day during the summer or during the off season. What does the training look like for a beach volleyball person?
It kind of incorporates it all, honestly. I think, and there's different ways that different federations, different countries do it. And in America, it really depends on your coaching and depends on the person, probably. But in Brazil, it's like very rep based. There's not a whole lot of strategy going on or talking about tactical stuff. It's all about skill development, just taking those 500 shots a day, that kind of feeling. Teams and players will practice for 4 hours, 5 hours a day in different spurts. The American sort of way has been to mix it all together, and in a lot of ways, that's what I've done is sort of take some things from here and there, and different coaches that I've trained with, and different teams that I've trained with. Training 5 days a week, possibly 6, looks different obviously for a tournament week, but definitely training after that every day. Maybe every other day if you're in season. The rest of the day is just recovering and doing a lot of different modalities. Maybe watching film with your coaches or watching film with your teammates. And then travel is obviously, again, a big part of it too. So that's part of the training is trying to figure out, what does this week look like as opposed to this week, because it really depends on how the week is, and there really isn't an off season that much. I know I told you before we got on that there's 3 or 4 weeks here where I have an off season finally, but that's pretty rare. There's still tournaments going on right now. There will be again in mid-February, so there's really not much of an off season. So yeah, it depends on the year too. I mean, it depends on your priorities as a player. I think if you're a domestically inclined player and you don't really care about making the Olympics, there's a lot of people in America that are just doing that. It fluctuates that way too. So there's a lot of different variety and variability, and I think that's one of the really cool things about this sport is there's so much variety. Yeah.
Let's jump into the headspace of a volleyball player. There's game or match defining moments in every sport. Basketball might be a free throw at the end of the game. The clock's not moving and there's hardly any time on the clock. And if you make it, you win. You miss it, you lose. In football, they have the 2-minute offense trying to get it into the end zone. In volleyball, it seems that it's like, it's match point. What is different and how do you train for those big moments so that you can be in the flow, be in the zone, be relaxed, be confident, believe in yourself, trust your skills in your training? How do you do that, or do you just black out and not think about it?
This is actually a really poignant question too, that for myself and my partner currently, because it's been a big sticking point as far as how do we do it. The best answer that I could give you is it takes a lot of just experience in those moments over and over and over again. I mean, it kind of brings to mind the Kobe and MJ mentality of you have to just take those big shots in those big moments. You have to go for it on match point. You have to believe that you're going to hit the shot that you need to hit, or side out when you need to side out in volleyball parlance, to get better at that skill, to be able to feel that confidence a year down the line, 5 years down the line, that you're going to be able to, perform in that moment. I'm personally, I think there's a lot of different ways people think about it and different opinions people have, but I think personally, there's not really a way you can replicate it in practice, in a training setting. You can put some pressure on things here or there and make it more difficult for yourself as a team or for your opponent in training. But I think, it's all about, this year has been a lot about that for me, is being in those moments, dealing with that pressure, knowing that this is match point. It could be the end of the tournament, it could be the end of the season, and I just have to go through it and put myself on the line. And if it doesn't happen, okay, but I showed the effort and I put myself there, and down the line, I know that I'll eventually be performing in those situations, and it won't even be a thought.
Well, one of the things that I do with my athletes is I teach them and coach them on two things. One is their identity, so that they feel comfortable in that big moment. Let's say it's a match point to win the tournament, and the difference between winning and not is usually a lot. The first place paycheck is always a lot more than the second. And you want to win it. You automatically, because you start thinking about the outcomes, the expectations, the results of the match, the money, the media, the opportunity, you naturally put more pressure on yourself. So I teach people how to divorce themselves of all the consequences of the big moment. Instead, let's just focus on the play, let's just focus on the moment, not the things that are going to happen from that moment. And the way that I do that is I help them build a performance bubble. I teach them how to build a performance bubble where everything that you can control that's positive, that's for you, that serves your best interest gets to come in, and everything that is not for you doesn't get to come in. So what happened the last time you played this team? Last time you played in this tournament? Last time you were in this situation and you weren't successful, that doesn't get to come in. But the last time you were successful in this moment, you get to bring that in. And so in a way, what you end up doing is you create this mental safe space in your mind where fears and doubts and past disappointments and past failures and all that stuff is not going to come in.
Yeah.
And the only thing that gets to come in is belief in who you are as a man, confidence in your skills, which manifests peace, and it manifests belief in the moment. And then you bring in the fact that you visualized that before you got there. On the airplane ride, on the bus ride over to the shuttle ride over to the tournament, that morning, the night before, the week before, you visualize this moment multiple times as you being a star in that moment. So your brain thinks you've already done it.
Yeah.
So when you're at the moment, you're not uncomfortable because you've already been there, even though you haven't. And then because we're human and we have this internal coach or critic, I call it a pocket voice, it's going to say, James, or somebody in the crowd says something, or your wife says something, or your teammate says something, your coach says something, triggers you. And it reminds you of what your dad used to tell you when you were in high school or in college that used to piss you off, those type of things. And it's like you have to be able to regulate in the real time when something comes in that doesn't serve you to get it out. So you have an escape hatch to get it out. And so it's been incredibly effective for guys, for athletes, because then you're not just going with the flow and hoping everything works out. You take a lot of the uncontrollables and you make them controllable. Give me some feedback.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that idea. I think there are so many opportunities where being able to recreate that feeling of peace or that feeling of confidence or whatever, whatever adjective you want to use for that sort of feeling is so vital to success in a moment. There's so many situations and I can think of 100 plus in just these last 3 weeks that I was competing where it really started to become mind over matter, and it was necessary for me to be able to pull out a match. That's beach volleyball to a T. It really isn't, as much as it looks like this big, physical, exciting, mano a mano, like who's stronger sport. In a lot of ways, it is one of the most mentally and psychologically demanding sports I think I've ever played or been around. And I think anybody who plays it would also agree. It's so much about what's between the ears, and that's like 95% of what separates people in this sport. And I've really noticed that the need for this, for exactly what you're talking about, being able to go there when the opportunity is there for you to be fixating on something else or to be lost in a distraction is just so important. And yeah, like one example for me to sort of try and get myself, it's kind of like tangent to that idea, but similar to it. In order to visualize and get myself into that peaceful space, I will listen to music from what the Stanford Band has recreated, because all these songs that the Stanford Band has played, they've played for 20 plus 30 years at the school, which I grew up there. I went to sporting events at Stanford all the time. It's in my DNA, and especially while I was there too, there were so many matches where I would hear the band, I'd walk out on the court, be hearing, certain songs, and it would just click me into place of like, this is my place of peace, and so I'll listen to some of that music before every match I play, and it gets me into that place of peace. A lot of people like to like pump themselves up and listen to like really high energy, stuff that gets them fired up. But for me, I need to like calm myself back into that place of peace. So that's a perfect example of, I think, that feeling of going into a match, being able to visualize yourself in a place where you're able to compete at a really measured high level, not too high, not too low. And it's been really effective so far. Yeah.
Well, one of the things that you're doing is you're tapping in to a memory bank that gave you joy and confidence and familiarity. So when you go back to listening to the songs by the Stanford Band, you're taking your mind to a happy place.
Yeah.
To a confidence. Right? And it's like, it's familiar, and it's like you could be in Brazil or wherever you may be and you feel like you're at home, right? Well, one of the things that I see with athletes is like in track and different sports, they use resistance parachutes to, train your speed, and then they take the parachute off and then you run without the parachute, and theoretically you should run faster. You need to do the same thing with your mind. So one of the things that you should do is, almost visualize a big moment. Go ahead and feel all the pressure. Your partner's mad at you, your coach is yelling at you, the other team's being pricks, the official's not giving you the calls, the audience is cheering for the other team. And it's like, you're hungry, or you got something that's bugging you. Go ahead and feel it all. And then let it go. Because it's not as bad as you think it's going to be. And so one of the things I help my guys do is make sure you show up at the competition traveling without bringing that mental parachute with you. Because what happens is, we talked about this real briefly before we started, in those big matches, in those match points, that's when you short serve. That's when you hit it in the net. You're not as relaxed. You're not as confident. Or you just you feel like in the middle of the serve, you feel like it's going to be short. So you just whack it and you hit it long. And it was like a knee-jerk reaction. It's like, where'd that come from? And it was just in a nanosecond because you didn't want to hit it in the net. And so the bottom line is the mind is what's controlling your body, not your body controlling your mind. So if you can control your mind, your body can do what it can do, what you've trained it to do.
Yeah, that's all too true in so many situations. Yeah, that I can think of, and it reminds me of a practice that actually I've done just kind of off the court too. It's called fear setting. I don't know if you know Tim Ferriss, but he's got a well-known podcast, and he's an author. And one of the things that he does to deal with situations that might be anxiety-inducing or cause a lot of stress for somebody is to just get to writing down or visualizing, in whatever case you may be, all the negative things that could be happening, all the pressures, all the bad stuff, and then when you get to that moment, or when you get to actually dealing with the problem, yeah, it's way easier. There's less resistance. That is a big that's a big part of how I deal with, I think, big problems in my life too.
Well, I think one of the things, like being married to a professional volleyball player, there's the inevitable comparison that goes on from time to time. And if you don't compare, she doesn't compare, some friend does. One of your friends says, hey man, you got to keep up with the misses, and it's like, or your dad says something, or a cousin. And so I think one of the key things is being in the moment and not allowing thoughts about those types of things come into your performance. Be a part of your. And I've seen this where the athlete that can totally be immersed in the moment. You're serving, you're setting, you're spiking, you're blocking, whatever you're doing, you're just doing it. And you're not trying to please somebody. You're not trying to get approval from somebody. You're not even trying to prove anybody wrong. You're not trying to get money. Because when you add those attachments, you've just loaded up your parachute to hold you down.
Yeah, that's a topic we'll probably get into a lot, later on with Molly and I both. But yeah, it is a sport ripe with those things that you could add to the parachute for sure. And I've seen that take down a lot of people mid-tournament and also high-level career. I mean, it goes for every sport. Yeah, that's spot on.
Okay, let's go to one positive and one negative. What is the biggest accomplishment that you're proud of in volleyball? And I'm talking about a moment. I'm not talking about a season. I'm talking about a moment where you made it happen, maybe against all odds, maybe in a big moment, maybe for a meaningful win, maybe for a lot of money. What was that moment for you?
Gosh, there's many, but of recent memory, actually, the second to last match I played, this was in the Philippines. We were just got back from the Philippines. Partner and I, we were down coming into the match. We were not physically there. We both felt really exhausted, both dealing with GI issues, and that's the thing in Asia. And the team we were going up against, we knew they were a really good team. It's a team that's pretty much our level, but they hadn't played in 3 tournaments before us, so we knew they were coming in fresh and ready to go. And they were set. We lost. They wiped the court with us. It was bad. It was like 21-11, I think the first set was. And we kind of looked at each other during the timeout, and we were like, hey, all we can do right now is just keep fighting, and something's going to break, something's going to change. And if it doesn't, then okay. But we both kind of had this feeling that things were going to change. And it was probably the worst set that we'd played together, just because we were so physically just exhausted. And nothing was really breaking our way that set either. But as soon as we walked back on the court, something felt different, something changed. And we just found a way in that second set. We found a way to win. And we got them kind of on the defensive, on the tired side of things. We wore one of their players down. blocker who was running up to the net every other point they served, and he had to contend with a lot of energy issues then. And so we were like, okay, we can do this, and we found a way to win the third set too, and it was like the most blissful 7th place match we'd ever played in our lives. Like neither of us set out in that tournament to win a match, 3 matches before even the medal rounds, but it felt like our gold medal match in a lot of ways. We had to dig, I think, deeper, and personally, I don't think I've ever had to dig any deeper than in that match in my life. Physically, mentally, everything. It was the end of the trip. It was the end of the season. Could have just kind of rolled down and said, okay, this is it. It's over. Season over. But we found a way to win that, and it ended up being a really big deal to get into the next round instead of to bow out in that round. So that's a positive for sure. And then negative, right?
Let's talk about before you go negative, let's stick on the positive. Your headspace in between the first set and the second set. You had no pressure going into the second set.
Right.
None. You had nothing to lose. They were already wiping you. What happened was you let go of everything that was holding you down. You almost, and that's a great place to be. It's almost like you accepted defeat in the sense of, we're just going to go see what we can do. If it ain't good enough, it's not good enough. And then you're able to play better. You're able to play more freely. You're more connected to your partner. There's better instincts. There's better teamwork. So what happened is, my question to you is, what was your mindset before the first set compared to your mindset going into the second set? Because we just went through the second set. What was it the first set? What were your expectations? Were you like making excuses in your head about, oh, we're tired, they're fresh, but we're going to, hopefully we can win? I mean, I don't know. What was your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's pretty spot on. I think we were a little heavy, we were thinking, I could definitely speak for myself at least, in saying like, I didn't expect to win by any means. I thought, one, I was thinking about how long and arduous the day ahead of us would be, because if we had won that match, we'd have to play 3 hours later in the next match against a better team. And then if we won that match, we'd have to play another 3 hours later against an even better team just to make it to the medal rounds. And to that point, we'd already played 2 exhausting matches and we were already down. And it was, the light at the end of the tunnel was there for the off season. And we had, a full month in our rear view of really tough, grueling travel and training and playing and in a lot of hot weather. And so I was just, all of that stuff was on my mind. I was like, there's no way we're going to pull this off. And sure enough, they kicked our butts. And I was like, okay, well, yeah, you're right. Pressure's off. Like, that. And then, yeah, the switch was made.
Okay. So one of the things that you guys did unintentionally before the first set was you had all those future things on your mind. Instead of just playing, one point at a time, you were planning out the off season. You were thinking about the travel home. You were thinking about, you're exhausted. You're dealing with physical ailments, whatnot. So here's the question I got for you. How can you on purpose, intentionally lock in? What is it like? Can you take a breath? I mean, I coach people on this stuff, and it's like everybody's got different things they prefer to do, but it's like, can you take a breath and breathe in the oxygen of belief and breathe out the dioxide of doubt? And 1 or 2 or 3 deep breaths changes the whole body chemistry that you got, and it's going to change your. Can you do that between every point, or do you already do something like that?
Yeah. First thing I would say is it's definitely easier said than done. I know there are tons of ways that different players do things that sort of reset them, and different partnerships do a lot of things to reset. One way that's like a pretty clear and quick and easy one for beach volleyball players is you get 1 time out of set. Basically, that's usually the reset. Like if you have lost 4 straight points, you're going to call timeout, if you've got one left. Another one that a lot of players will use is like, go clean the glasses. You know, if you have even just a speck of water on your glasses, go clean the glasses. And reps have gotten pretty good at making sure you're actually cleaning something off of your glasses, because if you're not, they'll say, hey, go back there or we're going to give you a yellow card. And that'll happen quite a bit too, actually, more and more every year. There are little ways like that players do that. I think for my partner, Came, and me, personally and as a team, in a lot of ways, we'll basically just tell each other, hey, it's going to break. It's going to happen. Things are going to change. Like, keep at it, keep working. It doesn't always work. It doesn't always mean that the switch is flipped, and it doesn't mean we win the match oftentimes. I wouldn't say often, sometimes. But more than not, actually, it at least gives us that switch in mentality of it is more under our control than we think. I think a lot of teams, when they get down, and this is probably what separates the great from the good or the average, is they will just say, to hell with it. Like, we don't need to keep fighting. It's over. Let's stop playing. Let's mail it in. It is time for a new season, or time for the off season, or whatever. And I think our sort of mentality as a team, and my mentality has always been this way, is I will feel so much better at the end of this if I've at least given myself that idea of, I need to be okay with how I played and how I comported myself, how I responded to the other team just playing their tails off and kicking our butt. Because sometimes that's going to happen. That's going to happen with every great team. That at least that can be controlled. And if you can control that, you've already controlled a lot more than what some other teams might do. And for all I know, the team that's kicking our butt right now is hoping to God that we will fold, so that they can stop working so hard. And when we didn't in the second set, in the third set, they quickly realized that, and the tables were turned, and it was their decision now whether or not they were going to fold, and they ended up folding.
Isn't that
and that's
crazy?
what I mean too about, it's crazy, because that's what I mean too about how the sport is it's so psychologically, it's a chess game. It's a psychological war between two sets of two guys or two girls, and whoever is able to turn the tables in their favor and have the upper mentality, the upper hand mentality for longer, is the one that usually wins if it's an evenly matched physically team.
Well, I'm going to get to your worst situation here in a second, but before we do that, I want to mention that one of the things that I see with sports and competition is that people don't like to compete. People either don't want to be way ahead, get on a run, or they're way behind and they just let it go and we'll go to the next set. Very few people that compete their ass off for every single point and allow the possibility that you could be down 5 and still come back, because you're competing every single one. And because you're competing, and athletes are competitors, but they don't like to compete. They want to compete for a minute, but they don't want to compete for the whole match. It's too hard. Mentally draining, taxing, all those things. And so if you can train yourself to compete for every point, and your partner's doing the same thing, you will kill the will of your opponent many times because they won't want to compete. Thoughts on that?
That brings me to the idea, and you said it, training. It's all about your training, and it's all about how you compete with the day. Are you competing at a high level in your daily life? Are you competing when you're recovering? Are you competing when you're warming up for practice, and when you have a practice where nobody's really watching, the stakes aren't really that high, you're not really, you might just be out there getting reps with your partner. And there are a lot of cases in this sport where people are not competing every day. It is such a free for all. There's so many people that don't have guidance, or haven't played at a high level, or seen the highest level and what it takes to stay at the high level, that don't really compete on a daily basis. They just go out and kind of go through the motions and think, all right, well, I'll kind of stick with it for another year because this is, I'm good enough at it. But it is all about, in my mind, and I think yours as well, it's all about competing with every action you take in a day. As soon as you let off the gas and you decide, because there are tons of little decisions throughout the day where you either decide to compete and to be okay or comfortable with the uncomfortable, and if you're in those moments and you can take that on, I think it does get easier, and you do start to have a more affinity for competing when it actually is a big, lights are on situation. And I think I've done a really good job of that throughout my career of always being engaged when the lights are not on, so that at the highest levels I can know that at least I'm ready to perform, at least to my standards, if not surprise myself a little bit in places.
Okay, let's jump into what's like one of the either most embarrassing, most disappointing moments you've had on a volleyball court, where when you look back now, you go, holy smokes, I can't believe that wasn't me. I don't know what I was thinking. I don't know what I was doing. Where you just had a total brain fart, but it was in a big moment. And you maybe even felt the pressure. Maybe you were even a little bit paralyzed mentally. Maybe you were a little strained physically. I mean, when you tighten up, you talked about earlier, you want to have soft hands in volleyball. Well, you got like brick hands when you are tense, right? And so, and your hands are a reflection of your mind. If your mind is tense, your hands are going to be tense. So share what happened and what was your mindset in that moment.
I'll go back to a moment also this year. This was my first tournament with my new partner, Kane, who he kind of picked me up in the middle of the season. I had another partner early on in the year, and we were doing pretty well, and the pressure was not on. Nobody really knew us or respected us necessarily on the beach, and so we were able to surprise a lot of teams. And halfway through the year, we were sort of like the up-and-coming team in a lot of ways. And as soon as I switched to playing with Kame, felt a little bit more of that pressure's on kind of thing. I'm at the higher level now. Like he's an Olympian. He's been around the block. He has won the Hermosa Open. He's won a bunch of other events. He's been on Sundays every year. Once I stepped up to that level, I was like, okay, now pressure's on. And our first tournament ended up being the Manhattan Beach Open, first big tournament. So that's as big as it gets in America. That they call it the granddaddy of them all for a reason, because it's huge. It's the mecca, for beach volleyball. And another piece of the pressure on my mind was the AVP had introduced a league. Now, has gone through the first year of it already, but if you didn't do well in this tournament and the one to follow with your partner, you basically were not going to be part of the league. And so you needed to hit a certain mark in that tournament and the next tournament to qualify for the league. And so that was a part of the pressure too. And from the first match of that tournament, which we won, it was closer than we thought it should have been. I was feeling tense. I was feeling jittery. I was feeling all the nerves. And once we hit some real adversity after we lost our second match, our third match was basically win or go home, playing against a team that I think we both knew we were better than, but they were sort of young and upstarts and feeling hot. They were feeling good that day too, and came down to the last few points at the end, and I was getting served. That's sort of like the trying
Picking
to think
on
of a
you.
good metaphor. Say it again.
They're picking on you. It's like
they're picking on you.
Quarterback
Exactly.
on the rookie corner.
Yeah, you're the corner that's just gotten subbed in for the guy that got hurt, and everybody knows it's going your way. So there's that like a good 5-point span there where they were just going after me. We were on the bad side, which means the wind is blowing at our backs, which is killing the jump serve. It can either kill the jump serve and it'll land 5 feet in front of you, which is hard to do if there's no wind, but tons of wind that day. Or they can hit it into the wind high and it'll hit you in the chest, or it'll land on the back line, So it's really hard to contend with those conditions if you're on the bad side. And so we happened to be in that spot too. And they just went after me, and I got aced a couple times. We had been up, I think, a couple points towards the end of that set. I got aced, and sort of rather than like taking those moments to sort of look at each other and calm ourselves down, I don't think we had necessarily developed those habits yet as a team, and I really hadn't as a player. And the next few points were decent serves, but I passed them, okay somehow, and flubbed a couple balls out of bounds, hit one into the tape and sort of rolled it out of the net for match point. And after those few points, I just remember looking into the sand, knowing the tournament was over. Probably our domestic season was in the toilet for the most part. We had one more chance in Chicago later, but we didn't do that well. But aside from the point, I felt that pressure. A lot of eyes there. A lot of people watching the new team. The new guy who's gotten picked up by the older player who's hoping they can spark something in their careers together. Just didn't go well.
Okay, so
That's as well as I could put it.
Okay, so let's pretend that you're in that same tournament with your new partner, and the first match is in an hour from now. What would you do differently? I mean, you've got the wisdom now, and you got the hindsight of 2020 vision. What would you do?
I mean, I think a big part of it for me going into that tournament was tuning out a lot of the distractions. I think I got a little bit swept up in the all that talk of what this tournament means and what it could do or what it could kill. Yeah, an hour before, if I could even stretch that back even a little further, I would just try and start to get myself in a place of less distraction and get into my own head a little bit more, visualize, maybe get to that point where I could visualize a match not going well like it did, and feel how it feels to have all those weights and all that pressure. That I think would have helped me a lot. I think in a lot of ways though, everybody on the beach kind of has to go through this, and everybody in a pro sport has to go through that moment where you're like back is against the wall and it seems like everything's going against you. Yeah, honestly, to put myself there an hour before that first match, I would probably try and visualize that, like visualize and put myself in that situation where, okay, it is true that everybody has to go through it. So
let me jump
why not
in there
take that pressure off? Yeah.
Okay. So I'm your coach. All right. And I'm going to share with you before the first match that you belong. And I'm going to ask you if you belong, but you got to believe you belong. And the whole narrative around the new partnership and the savvy old man, the old guy with the young, up and coming guy, I'm going to embrace it. And I'm going to know that they're going to attack me. Why wouldn't they? I mean, what sheep does the wolf chase? The one with the gimpy leg. They don't go to the front of the pack. They get the straggler at the end. Right? I mean, it's just common sense. If you want to have dinner, that's the guy you go after. So these guys, I'm inviting it. I'm ready for it. And then when it's coming, I'm like, bring it on. Bring it on. I'm ready. I'm not going to be perfect.
Yeah.
But I'm ready. And I'm going to look to my partner and go, I'm good, man. I'm good. We both knew this was going to happen. And I'm going to eliminate all attachments to outcomes. I'm going to get a big old scissors and cut that cord, man, between all potential outcomes. I'm just going to play the match. So here's the thing I have to ask. How many different venues have you played in? And I'm just ballpark, 50, 100 for beach volleyball.
Oh, for beach volleyball, probably around 50 at this point. Yeah, maybe less. So maybe even less.
Let's say it's 40. Manhattan Beach. Is the setup different than everywhere else, or is the net the same height? Is the distances of the courts the same? The dimensions of the court the same?
It's pretty much the same. It definitely. On the beach, this is where it gets tricky. Like the sand's not the same. The sand is different everywhere. the two courts, this is just kind of getting in the weeds, but like two courts north of the stadium court next to the pier, there's a little bit of like a downhill. So one side of the court is a little bit higher than the other side. And you've got fans up above on the pier, lining the pier, watching down. And the wind is coming at a different angle from off the shore than some of the courts that are more sheltered by stadium court.
Okay.
So there is a little bit of a difference.
You knew all that in advance?
Not to the degree that my partner and my coaches did, but had a general idea of that.
Did they use the same size ball and everything that they always do?
Yes, yeah. On the domestic tour, yeah.
Okay. So my point is really simple. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. The only difference is what you make in your mind. So what I would do is utilize the wisdom of your partner, since he's played in more matches and he's had more success and he's older, is pick his brain. Say, hey man, can I get permission to pick your brain for 5? Yeah, go ahead, man. What do you got? And then like, hey, what ask whatever questions you want to ask to get it out so you can be on the same level with him on situational awareness. But it's like I'm inviting people to come attack me. I want that because I want to, you know what? That's how you get better. And that's how you show your partner you belong, right?
Yeah, totally.
So this is what I had an athlete, he happened to be a cornerback, and I watched him have a meltdown on national TV in a game many, many moons ago. He was that injured guy that came in, and the quarterback of the opposing team threw it to his guy like 5 passes in a row. You never see that in football, not 5 in a row. And they marched like 75 yards down the field. And the kid never played another game after that. He lost the confidence of his coaches. He lost the confidence of his teammates. And it's like, that's
spot on. And I think since that moment, and truth be told, I think I had that skill really dialed in when the team was bigger. There's less pressure on you. There's a little bit more of a comfort zone. You know, when I'm talking about indoor and beach, there's a little bit more of like that comfort zone of yeah, come after me. You know, like I'm big enough and strong enough and experienced enough, skilled enough to take on whatever you're bringing at me. And I think switching into the new sport, that was a big thing for me, and it has been up to this point. But I think this last 6 months has been big just for building that confidence, especially playing in these international events where, you know, a lot of the guys have a lot more man hours in this particular sport than I do. But just in building that belief in myself that, okay, even if you bring whatever you're going to bring, it might be howling winds at my back. It might be the server on the other side of the net. They can't miss. They're just popping lines left and right. Even with all that, I still have that belief of like, bring it on and let's go. You know, whatever you're bringing at me, I can handle. Yeah. So it's been a bit of that like sport switch, and it's been one of the bigger things I've had to learn and relearn.
Well, if you would go back to being like 12 years old and there was nothing on the line, you were just out playing for fun, whether it was on the beach or in a gym. All you're trying to do is compete. All you're trying to do is experiment with how good you can be. Try different things because you're like, well, I saw somebody else do this. Maybe I can do it. Then what happens is one day you wake up and you're in the pros. And all of a sudden you become a master technician and you try to be perfect and you got to win. You want to make money? You got to win. Winners get paid. Losers go home. Well, when you're focused on winning, you can't be your best. But when you're focused on competing and letting the winning take care of itself, you can perform your best. So one of the big mental shifts I've helped people with is just the simple concept of stop worrying about winning. Stop focusing on winning because you will win more just being your best. So really go out and do what you're capable of doing to the best of your ability in whatever situation you're in. And then when you find that you have limitations or weaknesses, work on them. You struggle with X, whatever X is. Rep it. Get better at it. Add it to your toolbox. And then the next time you have a competition, just show up to be your best. Your goal's got to be your best. And I promise you, if you're your best, most of the time, you're probably going to win. Where what most people do is, oh, let's look at the scouting report. Oh, these guys are really good. I don't know if we're going to be able to beat these guys. Man, they're hot. Man, you've already lost before you've even got on the sand.
Uh-huh.
So it's like, so the objective from my perspective of, working with professional athletes for a long time is, can you do any better? James, can you be any better than your best? On any given day?
I don't think so.
No, that's it. So if you do that and you lose, you can live with it. Sucks for you when you don't do your best and you almost won. And if you would have played your best, you would have won. That's what you're trying to avoid, is the ones that got away, the ones you should have won that you didn't. The ones you can't win because the guys are just hitting lines on everything else. It is what it is. I mean, Hank Aaron struck out more than anybody else. Tom Brady's thrown more incompletions than anybody in the history of the NFL. But yet he's considered the GOAT. Well, it's because he's got a lot of reps. Played for 23 years or whatever. So it's like, you're not going to be perfect. Nobody's the only person that mistakenly thinks you should be perfect is you. I think I should be perfect.
Yeah.
Molly thinks she should be perfect. No. Just be your best. And you know what's interesting about your best? It's different every day. It's different every match. You might be dealing with a hamstring. You might be dealing with some kind of foot issue. Your best is going to change, but just give it your best in that moment, whatever it is.
Yeah, gosh. I mean, well said. I don't even know if I have anything to add. That's it.
You guys don't have any kids, do you?
No.
Okay. So I want to give you an idea. Let's fast forward 15 years and you've got a teenage volleyball player. Doesn't matter if it's a young man or a young daughter. What do you want that child to do when she or he plays volleyball? Have fun. Give it everything they got, and do the best they can, and be honest about their shortcomings, and then practice on the things that you're shortcoming. That's it. So that's also the way you and Molly should communicate about each other's games.
Yeah.
Same way.
Yeah, that's been a big goal of ours. Yeah. And I think she could probably tell you as well that she struggles with with that idea, a lot, that she should be perfect. She feels like she needs to be perfect to be winning. And I mean, that's how I have thought as well in a lot of cases, especially when I was playing indoor. I felt like I needed to be perfect to be on that travel roster for the indoor team. And yeah, it gets you in that cycle of comparison, for one, and not comparing yourself to your past self, but to other people. And yeah, perfectionism can be good when you're task oriented. I think that's where that's where the line falls for me, is if you're looking to be perfect on a task, like a task that's in front of you, and not looking to be holistically perfect, like thinking of yourself as perfect or having played perfect that day in general, I think that's where that's like a healthy thing, if you're, and this is something that Cam and I actually talk about a lot too, my partner, and we talk about it with our sports psych who works with a lot of the USA athletes. That's one thing we've been focusing on is task focus, proactivity on going back to what's the next thing we need to do in this match? What are the next 15 things we need to do, and how can we beat this team? Inclusive of all 50 something points. It's like, what can we do on this ball, this next serve, this next defensive stop that we need, whatever that can we be perfect at that? That's where you get yourself back into the zone. Like when you talk about the flow and being in the zone, like that's where it is.
Well, one of the things I see with perfection is it's an identity killer. Comparison is an identity killer, kills your identity, beats yourself up. But where perfection is very handy, at least, in leading up to a competition, is having a perfect process, getting your sleep, great nutrition, great communication with your partner, understanding your game plan, scouting your opponent, whatever, all those kind of things. You can be perfect in those. But once the first ball is served, the first point is in play, now it's about effort, and it's really about being the best you can be. Perfection doesn't get to come in the performance bubble, because there's no human that's ever been perfect. Oh, there's been one, but that's it. That's it. And I've never had a perfect day. I've never had a perfect, when I play golf, not even close. Not even close. I feel like sports is a game of mistakes, and who makes the least sometimes wins. But it's how do you adjust to the previous point? How do you adjust to, hey man, they're attacking a certain part of the court that you didn't have covered, and now you adjust. Okay, not going to be perfect. Now, what are they going to do? Once they notice you've covered that spot, they're going to attack somewhere else, and it's dynamite, dynamic. You got to be able to adjust in real time throughout the whole match, and it's exhausting. People get decision fatigue, mental fatigue in the competition, and they just want it to be over. Right? So
right. Yeah, that's really true of our sport too. The whole idea of whoever makes the least mistakes wins, basically, because they're at the highest levels. It is really rare to see somebody make more than a few errors in any given set. So if you do end up doing that, you're usually going to lose. So if you are mistake focused or perfection focused, yeah, you're heading down a slippery slope.
absolutely. Well, James, I want to thank you for being on Pro Mindset today.
Absolutely.
Thank
you as well.
I hope you enjoyed the conversation, learned a little bit about the psychic of a pro volleyball player. I'm looking forward to having Molly on here soon, and enjoy your reflection time between,
Yeah. We'll certainly be reflecting on a lot of the things we talked about too. These are the building blocks. And like I said, it's like 95% mental in this game. And at the highest levels of any sport, any field, really, that's what sets people apart. It's not the skill anymore. It's what's between the ears. Yeah. Likewise, I had a lot of fun.
Awesome. I would add one thing. I'd be remiss if I didn't. It's who shows up in your body for the competitions, and it's your identity. And it's like, if you can be so intentional about who you are and how you develop, not just as a volleyball player, but as a man, as an individual, as a husband, as a friend, as a son, all these roles that we play. You just, if you can remember that you're James who plays volleyball, your identity is not just being a volleyball player. And when you do that, you take so much pressure off your performance, where everybody else, when you walk in the restaurant, hey, what sport you play? I mean, when you're 6'8" and you're athletic, they want to know.
Yeah.
So you thought you were just going out on a date, and all of a sudden now you're in volleyball mode, and you weren't planning on being in volleyball mode, but because you walked in the door and somebody said something, all of a sudden now you're back into volleyball mode. I think the more you get away from the volleyball mode during the off season and focus on who you are, what your purpose is, the better volleyball you will play.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Pro Mindset. I want to thank James again for being on the show. Everybody go out and have a great day.
All right. Thanks, Craig.
Thank you.